Here we are back where we left off. Venous drainage of the brain and the face. Just really quick review. We talked about the dural sinuses again, the dural venous sinuses that drain the blood, and what odd vessels they are because they don't have typical vessel structure. And we talked about this in Unit 3. Then I introduced you to the internal jugular that drains blood out of the brain. And then there's an external jugular as well, since there's an internal, and it has all these branches coming from the face and the scalp. And all you need to know is the external jugular right there. And they do not meet. There is no such thing as a common jugular vein or just jugular vein. It's always internal or external jugular vein. And they both dump into right here. That's the subclavian. In this case, it would be the right subclavian. And once these two come together, let me switch colors. Once these two come together, the internal jugular and the right subclavian, it becomes what we call well, this case it would be right brachiocephalic that's an O right there, vein. So we had a brachiocephalic trunk or brachiocephalic artery, whichever one you want to call it, and it did not have a side because there's only one. It's on the right side, but you don't have to indicate right or left. In the case of the veins, you do because there is a left side as well. And it is, fortunately, symmetrical. So we could take a quick look at that. Okay, so we're going to head all the way back to the heart. Okay. Actually, I did not want that to show as early. Well, there it is. I won't draw it then. It's not too difficult, actually. You see there the right external, right internal. So this one's coming from the brain, and this one's coming from face and scalp. On the extra, oops, that should be a C. Scalp. And they both converge here on the right subclavian vein, which becomes then the right brachiocephalic vein. Same exact thing on the left side, fortunately. So both sides are both sides are the same. And then here, this last portion, when the brachiocephalics come together, that is the superior vena cava, which we already learned because it dumps into the heart. Which chamber does it go into? Well, there's a hint. It goes into the right side, upper chamber. So these, or this vessel would dump into the right atrium. Is there, the right atrium. And this is more like what your book has. So you can see there's a lot more veins, a little bit more complicated, but the only ones you need to know, again, are the internal and the external jugular. There is a vertebral vein between them. I've taken that off. That's equivalent to the vertebral artery. But I took it off the list. And then you have subclavian, once they pick up the jugulars, becomes brachiocephalic right about there. And then superior vena cava. Okay, so we're back to the heart. We went from the head, from the heart to the brain and the head and back. Now, we're going to go somewhere else. We're going to go into the abdomen. This will be fun. And we'll start with arteries. So, I'm going to start all the way up. I'm used to drawing this tall. Wish I could turn the slide on vertically, but I'll just draw a little version of it. So, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to draw it like this. That is a flat muscle that you know already, called the diaphragm. And the aorta, the heart would be sitting up here, literally sits on the diaphragm. And the aorta comes out of the left side and curves around like that. Like that. And I'm going to have to undo because I need to add some branches, but curves around, goes through the diaphragm, and when it goes through the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. And then we're going to let off some branches, and this is going to look strange at first. Well, it might look strange throughout the entire class. I don't really know. I think it always looks strange to me. Okay, I'm going to draw the other side. Actually, it's the right side that comes off lower, but that's okay. That, oh, get a little crunched up in here. That's not bad. These two don't actually meet. They should have been a little bit farther apart. Okay, so what on earth have I drawn? Well, let's get into a different, there we go. Oops, I did some undos. That's not what I meant. There we go. Now, okay. So this, after it passes through the aorta, or through the diaphragm, the aorta becomes the abdominal aorta. And I'm not having you know sections of the aorta, honestly. There are like the ascending arch, descending thoracic, or I just call it thoracic, and abdominal aorta. But I'm fine if you just say aorta. And, oh, I forgot to add a couple important branches here. There's this one. And there's this one. What are these weird looking things? One year I had students think they thought I was drawing a weird letter. What I'm drawing there is a cut cylinder. So imagine a blood vessel cut in cross section. You're kind of looking at it from an angle. Imagine that the blood is flowing from the aorta through, and it's been cut off. So there would be a circle at the end, circular shaped structure. So you have 3 vessels that have been cut off that would be heading like towards us. You can think of it that way. It would be heading actually as anteriorly. The aorta is very posterior. It's right against the posterior body wall. And so these 3 vessels are all heading to organs that are sitting anterior to the aorta. So that's what that thing is. Those weird things is they're cut vessels. Okay, so I usually think of it one of 2 ways. I either think of the paired vessels. So the paired ones would have a right and a left. And unpaired would only have a single one. So I usually start with the paired. I think they're a little easier. So this, I drew it a little exaggerated big, but it is big. That is the right renal artery. And where is it going? Hopefully, whenever you see renal, think kidney. So that's going to the right kidney, and this would be the left renal artery. That's heading to the left kidney. Then these 2 down here. This is the right gonadal artery, which is heading to, well, in a female it would head to the ovaries, and a male it would head to the testes. And this is the left gonadal artery. And it is interesting that these gonadal arteries come off really close to the renal, and that's because actually little gonads, before they're really recognizably male or female, they develop way up here next to the kidneys. If I drop a kidney here. And then during fetal development, those gonads, they head south in both males and females. In females, they stop about here, and in males, they just keep going off screen. Okay, so now I really have to get rid of some of that garbage. Every dotted line I drew. Okay. And then, okay, we're not done with all the paired ones yet. When the abdominal aorta splits into 2 like this, those are called the left and right. Common, iliac, like iliac crest, artery. And this, of course, would be the right. Common, iliac artery. And when you see the word common, you know it's going to split. In this case, the iliac split into, don't have enough room to write this, but this would be the internal iliac arteries. Oops, that's another I, sorry. Right and left. So this is the left, this is the right. And they go to contents of your pelvic cavity, like your bladder. And then these, of course, if these are the internal here, these would be the external. So this would be the left external iliac artery. And it's going to eventually become the femoral artery. And it's heading to the lower limb. Okay, and then this would be the right. I'm going to be lazy. External iliac artery. Don't be lazy on the exam. The only real abbreviations I've given you, well, giving you a couple, but like R is acceptable, A is acceptable, or L or V. Those are acceptable. Okay, so those are the paired arteries where there's a right and a left. What about the unpaired? Well, you have 3 unpaired, and this one, and this one. And all 3 of these unpaired single arteries are going to the digestive system. So this first one here, I'm going to label it way out here. This is called the celiac trunk. And because it's the trunk, it immediately branches into other arteries. So the celiac trunk is actually really short. In fact, it would already start branching right there. It's very, very short. So celiac, think of celiac disease. It is a digestive system disease. So celiac is going to the stomach and the liver and the pancreas. So stuff in the kind of upper area, I guess you could say. Yeah, upper GI tract. This next one, that's right below it, just inferior to it, it's actually called the superior. The superior mesenteric artery. Eventually, when we get to digestive system, this word mesenteric will make more sense, but it's basically a sheet that covers your intestines. So the superior mesenteric artery, it actually goes through that sheet and goes to your intestines. So the superior mesenteric does all of the small intestine, almost all of the small intestine. So you can just say small intestine, a little bit of the large. And then down here, way, way down here. So the superior is up here, and then you have to go way down to find the inferior mesenteric artery. And that one is going to, well, not the entire large intestine, but for the sake of this class, you can think large intestine. It's the one that's farther down the line. Okay, that's a lot in the abdomen there. It's not terribly difficult once, especially when you get the paired ones down, it reduces quite a bit. Oh, well, look at that. That is a mess. Still a mess. Okay. There it is in much more beautiful form. So there's the abdominal aorta, and then you can see the paired branches, the renals. The gonadals are a little bit harder to see because you've got these other vessels that you don't need to know that come off the aorta, go around to the abdominal muscles. But the gonadal come out at an angle, and they are going to head down towards the pelvic cavity. Females, they'd stop about here, and in males, they keep going out off screen. And then you've got these paired common iliacs. You can see the internal iliacs are heading towards pelvic cavity, and the external iliacs here, they go underneath this structure. They go deep to this structure. That's called the inguinal ligament. And both males and females have the inguinal ligament right there. After it passes deep to the inguinal ligament, we call it the femoral artery right here. And we'll get to the lower limb later. Okay, then the unpaired, see the celiac trunk, they've already showed you that it branches immediately into other vessels. So the celiac trunk is the first one here, and it's very, very short. On an exam, if I asked you for this and you said celiac trunk, you're good on this particular drawing. And then there's the superior and the inferior mesenteric. So these 3 are all headed to digestive system organs. Okay, that looks weird. That looks like a person. It kind of is because, I'm going to point this out later, that looks like a person. Okay,